I'm a 35-year-old man from humble roots. My wife hit a $9 million lottery jackpot, then promptly filed for divorce and threw me out of our home, overlooking the prenuptial agreement her parents insisted I sign before we tied the knot. Growing up, my family lived in a modest suburban house, always filled with the comforting aroma of fresh laundry and home-cooked dinners. After high school, I worked various jobs, bartending, assisting at my uncle's hardware store, and later managing a small sporting goods shop. It wasn't flashy, but it was honest work. My wife, however, came from a vastly different world. Her parents owned multiple properties, drove luxury vehicles, and threw lavish parties a few times a year. Let's call them my father-in-law, FIL, and mother-in-law, MIL. My FIL was a towering man, both in stature and presence, with a knack for dropping subtle, intimidating remarks that felt like veiled threats. My MIL had a talent for quiet disapproval. A single arched eyebrow could make anyone feel small. They were never openly hostile, but their polite words always carried an undercurrent of judgment. When my wife and I got engaged, it became clear her parents were wary of outsiders eyeing their wealth. Despite our long relationship, they treated me like an intruder. Before we could set a wedding date, my FIL demanded I sign a prenup. Lacking the funds to contest it legally and swept up in love, I convinced myself it was just a formality to appease them. Love would outweigh any paperwork, I thought. I still remember the day I signed it vividly. It was a sunny afternoon at their sprawling estate. My FIL slid the document across the table with a pen, while my MIL offered me tea, as if it were a routine business deal. My wife stood quietly to the side, barely speaking. That stung, but I brushed it off, thinking it wouldn't matter long term. The prenup stated that her family's gifts, inheritances, or trust funds were her separate property, but major assets acquired together, like a home or lottery winnings, would be considered marital property. I found that clause unusual, but my focus was on marrying her. 6 months later, we wed by a serene lake in an extravagant ceremony. My parents, overwhelmed by the opulence, remained supportive. I noticed strain in my father's expression when he greeted my in-laws. He'd always advised me to trust my instincts, but I believed love would overcome any doubts. The early years of marriage were mostly smooth. We lived in a condo partly funded by her parents' gift for the down payment, though I contributed to the mortgage each month. In hindsight, that gift felt more like a leash. Back then, I assumed this was just how rich families operated. We had typical arguments about money and occasional clashes over her parents' overreach. They'd show up uninvited, rearrange our home with new furniture, or redecorate without asking. My wife dismissed my irritation, calling it their way of helping. Then came the day that flipped our lives upside down. My wife called me, ecstatic, announcing she'd won a $9 million lottery from a ticket she bought on a whim at a gas station. I was thrilled, imagining quitting our jobs and traveling the globe, but the excitement faded fast. She insisted we keep it hush-hush, even from my parents. She grew secretive, meeting with unfamiliar lawyers and talking about claiming the prize properly. When I asked to attend these meetings, she brushed me off, saying I'd feel out of place. That hurt deeply. I had no idea the real shock was coming. One evening, I returned home exhausted to find her and her aunt rifling through our things. She casually announced she was filing for divorce and told me to pack up and leave the condo, claiming it was solely hers. I was stunned. I'd paid toward the mortgage, but she acted as if her father's down payment and her newfound wealth erased my role. My heart shattered. I called my dad, voice trembling, explaining I'd been kicked out of my own home. It felt like the ultimate betrayal. Then came the twist. I learned my FIL had sent his personal lawyer to protect her interests, aiming to cut me off from the lottery winnings. But they'd overlooked the prenup they'd forced on me. Instead of fully protecting their daughter, it classified any windfall during marriage as a shared asset. Suddenly, I realized their rush to divorce me after the jackpot could backfire. I decided to tread carefully. My dad urged me to stay composed, hire a lawyer outside their influence, and prepare for a tough battle. I was determined not to back down. They'd treated me like a disposable pest, but if they thought I'd slink away, they were gravely mistaken. I spent a few nights at my parents' house, reeling from the shock. My mom was furious, ranting that my in-laws had disrespected me from the start. My dad, equally upset, stayed practical, connecting me with a family law attorney friend for a meeting the next morning. In the lawyer's office, I felt a mix of anger and hope. I explained how my in-laws demanded the prenup, how my wife won $9 million, and then blindsided me with divorce. When he reviewed the prenup, he laughed softly. "They sabotaged themselves," he said. "The document clearly listed lottery winnings as marital property. Unless a judge made an unusual ruling, I had a strong claim to a significant share. That news was a lifeline. I'd feared the prenup would shut me out, but their focus on protecting inherited wealth had left them vulnerable to this scenario. My lawyer cautioned that it wouldn't be simple. My in-laws were rich, well-connected, and likely to unleash a legal army. But he was confident in our case, especially since I'd contributed financially to the marriage and been abruptly evicted from our shared home. I asked about the divorce process. In our state, a contested divorce could drag on for months. But if my wife's side realized their weak position, they might push for a quick settlement. My lawyer warned they'd likely try scare tactics or lowball offers to make me waive my rights. Sure enough, my FIL left a threatening voicemail within days, demanding I back off, claiming I deserved nothing from his daughter. He warned that pursuing the winnings would leave me with nothing. My lawyer told me to keep records of everything. Then my MIL ambushed me outside my parents' house, offering a meager sum to disappear quietly. She called it generous, but it wouldn't even cover half my mortgage contributions. I declined, saying we'd settle it in court. She sneered, shocked by my refusal, clearly unused to anyone rejecting her money. With talks stalled, my lawyer filed motions to prevent the lottery funds from being hidden or moved. That infuriated my in-laws, who began spreading lies that I was a gold digger who'd targeted their daughter. It hurt, but I stayed resolute. My boss at the sporting goods store stood by me, shrugging off my FIL's attempts to interfere with my job. Some friends called me greedy, others cheered me for standing up. The stress was overwhelming, but I refused to fold. My wife stayed distant, shielded by her parents, communicating only through her lawyers. They claimed I'd been a leech who contributed nothing to the marriage. My lawyer countered with financial records, utility bills, and the prenup's clear wording on windfalls. We also emphasized my abrupt eviction from the condo. The judge ordered both sides to prepare for a formal asset division hearing. In a final act of intimidation, my FIL tried pressuring my boss again, who firmly rebuffed him. My lawyer advised caution, but was optimistic the judge would see through their tactics. Nothing could have fully prepared me for the courtroom showdown, but the prenup they'd forced on me gave me a surprising edge. As the hearing neared, tensions skyrocketed. My wife still avoided me, but her lawyers flooded mine with motions, arguing the lottery was separate property since she bought the ticket. They ignored the prenup's clear language on marital windfalls. Meanwhile, my FIL tried tarnishing my name among friends and colleagues, painting me as a schemer who'd married for money. The ordeal fueled both my frustration and determination. If they thought they could bully me into submission, they were wrong. My lawyer and I scrutinized the prenup, finding a key clause stating all financial windfalls, including lottery or contest winnings, were marital assets unless explicitly stated otherwise. It was as if my in-laws had left a loophole wide open. At a preliminary conference, my wife showed up with her parents and a team of 4 lawyers plus a financial consultant. They glared at me with their usual arrogance, but their confidence wavered when my lawyer presented the prenup's exact wording on lottery winnings. The judge, unimpressed by their attempts to dismiss it, ordered all major assets frozen until the main hearing. That afternoon, my MIL approached me outside the courthouse, urging a mature conversation. She offered an even smaller sum than before, framing it as generous for someone of my background. I refused, saying the judge would decide. She accused me of tearing their family apart, as if I'd initiated the divorce. Her hypocrisy enraged me, but I stayed calm as my lawyer had advised against emotional outbursts that could be used against me. Fearing they might hide the lottery funds, my lawyer secured court orders to block large transfers. We also lined up a forensic accountant in case they tried anything shady. My FIL's frustration boiled over. He left a venomous voicemail calling me despicable, blaming me for ruining his daughter's happiness. It was absurd, considering they'd orchestrated my eviction right after the jackpot. As the hearing loomed, my lawyer and I prepared thoroughly. We practiced my testimony to keep it clear and factual, relying on evidence like the prenup, mortgage receipts, and texts showing my wife acknowledging our shared expenses. My lawyer advised short answers to let the documents speak. If they tried emotional manipulation, we'd stick to the facts. On the hearing day, I stood outside the courthouse, nerves racing. My parents came for support, but waited outside the courtroom. Inside, I saw my wife with her father, both stone-faced. Her mother sat in the back, arms crossed. My FIL's lawyers in sharp suits seemed confident, likely banking on their wealth and legal firepower. The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s, got straight to business, asking both sides to present their cases. My wife's attorney portrayed me as a freeloader who'd barely contributed to the marriage. They argued the lottery ticket was her personal purchase. My lawyer calmly cited the prenup's clause on windfalls and showed bank records proving she'd used our joint account card for the ticket. When we presented that evidence, I saw unease spread through my FIL's team. The judge asked if they had proof the funds were solely hers. They stumbled, claiming the card was used by mistake or that her father's deposit funded it. But the statements clearly listed both our names. The judge took note, her expression skeptical. Then my wife spoke, saying she didn't mean to hurt me, that her parents pushed the divorce to safeguard the winnings. She faltered, admitting their pressure, but also claimed she feared others would target us for the money. My lawyer asked if she'd discussed any of this with me beforehand. She admitted she hadn't. The judge's disapproval was evident. By noon, it was clear the prenup was their undoing. The document they'd forced on me now jeopardized a huge portion of the lottery in my favor. The judge set a follow-up hearing for final rulings, but indicated she'd likely treat the lottery as a marital asset for equitable division. Outside, my FIL muttered, "This isn't over." But his bravado was fading. In the weeks before the final ruling, their desperation grew. Their lawyers filed motions to reinterpret the prenup, claiming it wasn't meant to include lottery winnings. The judge rejected these, citing the clear wording. My MIL tried confronting me again, warning I'd regret breaking their family. I reminded her they'd started this by evicting me and filing for divorce. My wife left tearful voicemails, saying she didn't want things to end so bitterly and suggesting a private deal to salvage something. I might have considered it if they'd treated me fairly from the start. But after their deceit and threats, my trust was gone. My lawyer advised against informal talks. We had a solid case and no reason to settle for less. The final hearing arrived, the courtroom packed with both sides' attorneys. My parents and a few friends sat quietly in the back for support. The judge reviewed the filings and heard final arguments. My FIL's lawyer made a last-ditch effort, painting me as a schemer who'd exploited the prenup's loophole after leeching off their generosity. My lawyer countered with 3 key points. They'd forced the prenup on me. Second, it explicitly included windfalls like lotteries as shared assets. 3, their rush to divorce me post-jackpot showed their intent to exclude me. We also noted my mortgage contributions and the unjust eviction. The judge listened attentively, then issued her ruling. She declared the lottery winnings were undeniably marital property per the prenup's terms. She rebuked my in-laws for trying to reinterpret their own agreement and found my eviction from the condo unreasonable. She awarded me a significant portion of the lottery, plus compensation for my share of the condo. A finalization date was set for paperwork. My FIL looked furious. My MIL whispered angrily to him. My wife stood there, eyes teary, perhaps from regret or frustration at losing so much money. I felt both vindicated and heartbroken. We'd once loved each other, but greed and her parents' influence destroyed it all. Afterward, their lawyers offered a slightly revised settlement, likely hoping I'd take less to avoid more drama. My lawyer advised sticking with the judge's ruling. I only agreed to relinquish my claim to the condo. I never wanted to return there. They issued me a substantial check, not quite half the jackpot, but enough to rebuild my life comfortably. My in-laws' arrogance led them to believe their wealth made them untouchable. They never expected me to fight back so effectively. The prenup they'd forced on me became the tool that secured my share. Poetic justice at its finest. My wife, from what I've heard, remains under her parents' control. Some mutual friends say she's grappling with guilt, but I doubt she'll ever publicly admit her family's role in this mess. I used part of the settlement to help my parents renovate their home. A thank you for their unwavering support. I invested another portion wisely. The ordeal left me wary of trust, love, and wealth, but I'm comforted knowing I held my ground. I refused to be intimidated into accepting scraps. Though painful, The outcome felt like a victory over their tyranny. Now free from their grip, I've returned to a simpler life, much like my pre-marriage days. But I'm tougher, wiser, and far from the naive man they thought they could crush. If they remember me, let it be for the fact that their own legal weapon ensured I wasn't left empty-handed. They started the fight. I ended it. And that closes this chapter. Thank you for watching Story. Please subscribe and hit the notification bell for more real-life stories.